What is up, mortals? It is Ellen here with a new video for you. Welcome to the third part of What If Deku Had the Rinnegan. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So, we begin. Waking up in Recovery Girl's office was an experience and a half. With a pained groan escaping from his lips, he struggled to sit up and put a hand over his eyes, suddenly aware of the painful headache he was now nursing. He felt exhausted. Even moving felt like a marathon.
What? Oh, no.
A woman's voice, aged and stern, came from his right.
You lay right back down, sonny.
Bewildered, Izuku nonetheless complied and let his body drop back into the soft mattress, looking to the side with furrowed eyebrows to figure out exactly who he had been talking to. And then his eyes widened. Oh God, His voice suddenly got a lot higher pitched as he started to fanboy. You're Recovery Girl, the youthful heroine! And she was. The elderly woman stood at barely 120 centimeters, and all her time as a heroine had clearly taken a toll on her, but the youthful heroine looked as ready to help as she did in all the posters he'd seen. She looked at him with a bemused expression, but there was a spark of kind amusement in them that told him it really wasn't as bad as it could be.
You really had to go above and beyond on that, didn't you? If it wasn't for that girl managing to stumble her way to you and prevent you from falling, you'd be facing a lot worse than just quirk exhaustion. Really, what on earth made you go as far as knocking yourself out like that?
Ah, so that's what happened. That made 2 times Izuku had ended up fainting after using Shinra Tensei, though the first had been because of a general lack of oxygen, as opposed to his pushing every last ounce of energy he could muster into the move after he'd already been somewhat tired. He decided then that there would not be a third time. Izuku's energy reserves grew steadily the more he practiced with his quirk. He just had to train enough to move past this limitation, too. He'd done what he did to save someone. There's no way that could ever be wrong. He, with his own 2 hands, had been able to step up and save someone. He heard the woman sigh.
Yep, I know that look. You're going to train yourself into the ground, aren't you? A chuckle. Honestly.
She walked up to him and gave him some candy? He instinctively put it in his mouth and chewed, looking up at her with confusion evident in his purple eyes.
All you are is out of energy. Those should give you some of it back. Realistically, you're just exhausted, not injured, so there's not much point in keeping you here. You just need some rest.
She paused.
But I did want to ask you something.
Izuku blinked. Yes?
Your eyes are rather remarkable. Your quirk, right?
She didn't wait for an answer.
From what I was able to gather, they give you some degree of control over gravity or something like that, right?
He took a moment to ponder on her words. Yes, that was what the Deva Path did, but he couldn't get rid of the feeling that there was yet more for him to learn. Which, mind you, makes no sense. Quirks don't work like that. Not usually. Still, to just say yes would feel wrong. I guess, he said.
I see.
Recovery Girl nodded, writing something down on her files.
As I thought. But tell me something. They're not a mutation you've had from birth, are they?
That was an odd question. No, he confirmed, and I didn't even know they did anything until a year or so back. She hummed again, furrowing her eyebrows softly.
I see. I suppose the awakening must have been rather sudden then.
Yeah, Izuku agreed. I fainted, and so did my mom. Ended up completely wrecking the room.
That makes sense,
she murmured, though still furrowing her eyebrows. And at this point, Izuku's curiosity won out. Why do you ask? He questioned, swallowing the candy.
Ah,
she waved him off.
It's nothing important, Sonny. It's just interesting. There's some very faint scarring on the edges of and under your eyelids. Scarring similar to that seen in transplant patients. But I'm sure it's a coincidence. Mutations can't be transplanted after all.
Well, that's ominous. Those thoughts lingered in Izuku's mind for a few weeks, though usually overtaken by the crushing anxiety that came from waiting restlessly for the results of a test that his future quite literally depended on. He thought on his eyes, on what the woman had said, and on the Deva path. A path, his mind supplied. It stood to reason, then, that there were more paths, right? More options than just one? In Buddhism, and this had taken him some time to figure out, Deva were a creature in Buddhism who inhabited the plains such as Deva. Having never looked into religion all that much, Izuku had lost a good few hours reading up on all the mythology that included. The more he thought on it, the more convinced he felt that there was more yet to discover about his odd quirk. In the end, he ended up running right back to where he'd spent much of his time, Dagobah Beach. Armed with a notebook, a bunch of nonsensical theories, his chakra, and a lot of free time, as well as the intense desire to think about anything but the results of the entrance exam, experimentation had begun anew. Just flowing chakra through his body wouldn't be enough. The Deva path had a trick to it, a mental trigger of sorts he hadn't been aware of until he first activated it. It had been fun to figure out that he could somewhat stick to surfaces after trying to coat his hand in chakra, but that didn't feel quite like what he was looking for. So he kept trying things. He ran through a list of Buddhist terms, some of which felt like they were almost there, and did all sorts of random motions. He punched and kicked and tried everything he could think of, but nothing quite hit the mark. Until, one day, the letter from UA arrived, with a projector that revealed All Might himself.
Am I on screen?
Oh my god! A flash of blue, a loud burst of noise. In his excitement, and having been on the verge of a breakthrough for a while, Izuku inadvertently discovered the second aspect of his quirk. That is, his hand suddenly turned into a cannon and fired a beam that burned a hole through the ceiling, the roof, and continued upwards into the sky. In the end, Izuku went to sleep with 3 new things. 1. The knowledge that he got into UA. 2. The second of who knows how many abilities his eyes had. 3. The holes in the house they'd have to mend, and Mom had asked for the Bakugo family to help, too. And that, as they say, was that. Still, who would have thought that a useless Deku like him would have gotten first place? And here's a word from our sponsors. For Izuku, training and experimentation were key to doing as well as he did in the exam. Now, you may not have some super secret quirk with abilities you don't understand, but you can still train something you do have, your brain. Thankfully, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. With the services Skillshare provides, you can get access to many in-depth tutorial videos on basically anything you want to learn. Each class that they have is bound to help you with your creative endeavors. Do you want to learn how to make videos like this one? Want to learn how to write scripts or edit audio? Skillshare has you covered. And with our link, you can have a 14-day free trial. So what are you waiting for? Click the link now and get 14 days worth of classes free. Link in the description below. UA was about as intimidating as it had been in the pictures he'd looked at. His mother had been quite insistent that it would be just fine and that he'd feel a lot less nervous when he actually got there. Izuku couldn't recall a time where she'd been as wrong. It was still interesting to look at, though. Everything had clearly been designed to be as inclusive as it possibly could to different quirks while still retaining some degree of uniformity and being recognizable. Doorways were both wider and taller, likely to allow for bigger students with mutations to be comfortable, and Izuku would wager that desks were either the same or specialized for different students. Not that he'd know yet, of course, as he was standing very, very still in front of the closed door to Class 1A, his eyes wide and his lips parted in wordless shock. Beyond that door were those UA had chosen to be the next generation of heroes. Only about 1 in 100 examinees made it into UA's gates, and Izuku was about to join the cream of the crop. He would take his spot alongside those chosen few. His mind suddenly wandered to the boy with the glasses from the entrance exam, and he suppressed the urge to shudder. He then recalled the absolute death glares Kachan had been giving him while they all tried to patch up the holes in his house, and he gave up on resisting the shudders altogether. Inhaling deeply, he stepped into the classroom.
Don't put your legs on the desk! Don't you think that's disrespectful toward your classmates?
Shut up, you two-bit extra! Which school are you even from? Kachan. Kachan and the bespectacled boy were essentially screaming at each other. Izuku suddenly and aggressively regretted his decision to step inside. Maybe he could sneak out. And the boy with the blue hair and the glasses turned to look at him. Oh no. Dread bubbled in his gut. The boy approached him. Izuku stepped back a little bit. "Hello," he greeted. "I am Tenya Ida from Some." Yeah, he stuttered, eyes wide. "I heard." The boy was very, very loud. I am Izuku Midoriya, right?" Ida exclaimed. Was this actually his indoors voice? "I know. You scored first on the exam. I must hand it to you, Midoriya. Not only did you score admirably against robots, but you also divined the true purpose of the exam, did you not?" No, Izuku had most definitely not, and he was absolutely unprepared for this conversation.
Ah, it's the curly-haired kid!
A familiar voice chirped from behind him, and Izuku all but jumped in surprise, whipping his head back to look at the girl. "She looks really cute in the school uniform," was the first thing that crossed his mind. The second was more akin to panicked screaming.
"I'm so glad I found you!"
the brunette exclaimed with a wide smile on her lips, completely unaware of Izuku's plight.
"You made it, just like President Mike said! That last blow was super cool!"
No, that's... it was nothing. Not nothing, but, it was all thanks to you. That is to say, maybe... Sure, maybe Izuku had found himself growing more and more confident as he stepped onto the light and learned more about himself. But there was absolutely a limit to that confidence. Loud and abrasive, but apparently respectful people and nice cute girls were both miles off of that limit. "If you're here to make friends, do it elsewhere," said the giant yellow caterpillar with a man's head on the doorway. "This is the Department of Heroics." Wait, Izuku thought, blinking twice. Said the what? The man jumped to his feet, stepping out of what apparently was a sleeping bag and not his actual body. He was lean, pale, with long black locks of hair that fell over his eyes and a scarf wrapped around his neck. He looked like he hadn't shaven in 3 weeks and hadn't slept in 9. "It took you lot 6 seconds to shut up," he grumbled. "Life is short and you're all wasting time." Izuku took a moment to analyze it. There was something familiar about him. This man must be a pro-hero, right? Izuku recognized his attire from somewhere, though he was pretty sure he'd recall the face of a hero that looked like a caffeine addict. "I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota," he supplied, taking a few sets of uniforms off of his sleeping bag. "PE uniforms? Throw these on, then shove off to the PE grounds." This was going to be an interesting year, wasn't it? Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.